Uh-oh. You better go back. You got things happening.
Yeah.
Okay, so Russia is now being attacked by the Western powers, although these Prussians currently being exiled, though they don't really have very far to go. Austrians are moving in, Prussians moving in, the Dutch are moving in, the Swedes are moving in. Lots of people have clearly noticed that Russia is causing a few problems, and this is likely to worry the Timurids, who are now effectively fighting against Iran, Texas, and Japan on their own. Iran obviously has taken a bunch of territory, but these guys definitely have become a little bit more defensive in nature, and I do wonder if this is a deal that Iran has brokered with the Austrian side, or whether this is revenge for the Commonwealth. Because remember, the humbling of the Commonwealth and Poland, Lithuania was at the hands of the Russians, and I'm pretty sure that the Commonwealth will not have forgotten this. Tsardom versus the Empire, indeed. So the Dutch moving in pretty quickly. The Dutch probably do have some pretty crazy sieging bonuses. Let's see if they've taken offensive. They have. So they've got the Engineer Corps. They've got the Army Sappers. Dutch sieges are scary because they are very, very quick. Does he have a lot of artillery? He does. 17 units. Is that enough? No. It's not actually. He needs 20.
Hello.
Hello.
Have you seen what's going on?
I have, yes.
All those nice blue flags.
So how on earth did Sweden declare war on Russia? On Finland without calling Russia in?
We have no idea, nor does Russia. No one has any idea, because from what we all know, like Russia should have answered that call because they are, on march.
Sorry, there's a fight coming up. I need to commentate this.
Yep, and I gotta get involved too. So
Thanks.
I'll be back.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the Russians are moving in against the Dutch right now. We've got 60,000 against 34,000. The Dutch are moving in. The Swedes are moving in. We'll see how strong the Swedes are in this situation. Novgorod is still Russian. It is a forest. There might be a river crossing. This is 20,000 against 100,000, with another 80,000, 50,000 against 100. 45 still marching in. This is a -1 for Sweden. 121 discipline versus 126. The Dutch army is taking the brunt of this with their +10 combat ability against the Russian +10, so those armies are roughly equal. But the real deciding factor here, I think, is going to be morale, although now Sweden has arrived in some bigger numbers. Swedish morale is starting to count a little bit heavier, but it does look like the just superior Russian firepower and ability to do damage is really ticking in here. Austria seemingly unable to really assist in the northern front, and it does look like Russia has routed the combined Dutch-Swedish forces, although Austria and Prussia are probably going to be the more dangerous factions in the south, simply because Austria has the resources to maintain a very large standing force, and then Prussia is Prussia. I'm a little bit surprised that Sweden didn't do better there. Sweden with 48,000 manpower, and they are going to need to replenish 15,000 of that. So their manpower situation could be a little bit dangerous. Russia needing to reinforce another 23,000, so Russia's still got about 80,000 to go. Austria only with 55,000. Okay, that's less than I expected. Commonwealth with 64, although they are hurting for money. And then the Prussians with 48,000, but they still have a very healthy war chest.
Yeah, Poland, you might have noticed, is not actually in the war with Russia.
Yeah.
Or Commonwealth. They declared on Finland, and for reasons that surpass understanding, Finland didn't somehow manage to put Russia in.
This is
Finland
really
is a
bizarre.
march. Yeah, Finland is a march. I've spoken to both the Commonwealth and Russian players, and neither of them have any. Both of them agree that that's what's happened. Neither of them understand why.
Have a word with Sweden.
Yeah, and well, possibly. And somehow, Commonwealth ended up getting assessed a -3 stab penalty as well for declaring war on someone they had a truce with. So they're not the happiest bunny in the world with the system, not with any human being, just with EU4 itself. Right now, but,
yeah, I can.
So Strike has a truce with Russia, therefore can't declare war on Russia, which is why they're not in the war. They'll get called in as soon as the truce expires.
That's really weird.
That's why I came on here to explain it.
Yeah.
I'm sure you were wondering why. I've not had you in my other ear because I've been talking to a lot of players.
Yep.
But I suspect you were wondering why they weren't in the war.
So Sweden's just annex a ton of land from Finland because Russia's not in the war to protect Finland against Sweden.
Yeah.
Could you do me a massive favour? Could you like make a note of all these weirdness that's going on? Because this feels like a bug that we need to report.
Yeah, I will try.
Thanks. It just looks like marches aren't calling their overlords in.
I wonder if it's because it used to be a player.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. Another reason not to allow players to play as marches. That's very, very strange.
Yeah, if we get a pause, I would take a save, but I don't want to slow the game down.
I'll do a save right now. Done.
Yeah, you have a much faster hard drive than I do.
Yeah, saves aren't a problem for me. Ooh,
right.
Meanwhile, okay, cool.
I'm going back to the admin channel.
Yep, thanks.
Bye.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so we'll come back to the Russian front in a minute. I just wanted to note that the Siberian offensive has now begun. It does look like this is a... Oh no, Maguindanao, the pirates! Probably useless in the field because most of their effort, I believe, will have been in the navy, using their armies basically as just free manpower to start taking out Siberia. So the big fighting armies can deal with the actual fight and stuff, but then they can go after the Siberians. Kind of cheeky for Sweden to take the Finnish land there. I mean, yeah, but also, I don't think it was intentional from what I'm seeing. Like, the intent there was to declare war on Sweden to call Russia in. So I'm glad that Sweden declared war on Russia afterwards. That, if they'd only declared on Finland and then taken Finland out, I would have been crying blue murder right now. But because they then declared war on Russia, clearly that was, yeah, I'm okay with it. It's not working as intended, but the players are getting around it as best they can. Alright, so St. Petersburg is currently being threatened by the Dutch. Looks like the Russians are moving in with good numbers. It's going to be basically 100,000 versus 100,000, 135,000. We do have the Swedes marching in again. 6.5 morale against 6.1. The Dutch actually having a surprisingly strong army, but just the sheer amount of fire damage. Although right now, the roll is definitely going against the Russians, and that's actually the Dutch doing the damage. Sweden has... still moving in, but they have not force march, so Sweden is still a good week away from this fight. And the fact that Sweden did not force march is going to basically decide this fight against the Dutch. And the Dutch, if I were the Dutch right now, I would be really pissed off with my Swedish ally, because Sweden is probably going to get stack wiped here. 150,000 against 26,000, losing 1,000 men a tick. Might not quite be a... Oh, nope, there it goes. Stack wipe. Boom. So now the Swedes are out of this war, because I don't think the Swedes really have the potential to reinforce in any meaningful way. They do have the money. They'll be able to recreate their army pretty quickly, but they're not going to have the manpower to really maintain it. They will have to use mercenaries, I think, and that's going to be a further drain on their income. Although they are allied with some pretty wealthy nations, the Dutch could certainly stump up the cash to give them a hand. Prussia possibly, Austria possibly as well. So the Dutch in particular, being the Bank of Europe, could definitely finance the Prussians from joining. Could help the Swedish refinance. I was reading messages which said Prussia. And now the Russians are able to turn and start facing off against the Austrians and the Prussians, who have frankly not taken a huge amount of territory here. Their offensive has not been hugely offensive. I mean, Russia has done a great job of maintaining a bunch of level 6 forts here, so Russia's frontier is going to be very, very difficult to crack indeed, just because the sheer amount of time required to defend this. One thing which Russia... Oh no, they are doing defensiveness. They have very low defensiveness. Huzzah! Oh, right, because it's Prussian right now, and the Prussians can't do the defensiveness edict. It would be Poltosk. This was probably, yeah, a better example. 56% defensiveness. So the Russians doing everything right to just hold these guys back, although Russia not doing a counter-offensive right now is potentially buying time for the Commonwealth to join the fight, and possibly for some other things to happen too. Hexdex, thank you very much for the 13-month resubscription. Very much appreciate that. Thank you very much. And Jacket Man and Winkey, thank you very much for the follows. Welcome to the channel. Good to see you here. Hello. How are the Timurids holding up on their own? It does look like the frontier is retracting slightly. We've got the Timurids attacking into Okon at the moment, but this is just steppes. This isn't the strategically vital position the Zazakt is. If they can hold on to Zazakt, then maybe they can cause some problems. It does look like Uran's forces, oh no, that's Shan. Shan's forces and Uran have been sent packing again, so it looks like there was a smaller skirmish, but judging by the fact that these guys aren't also running, it was probably just a stack versus a stack. And neither player particularly wanted to commit more forces, or maybe one player did, I'm not sure. Meanwhile, the Swedes do look like they are trying to build up their forces again. The Dutch have got an army down here in Prussia. It looks like their offensives in the north have since ended. If we go over to the Russian side, we can see where their forts are. There is a big open area here. Like, all of the forts are down here. They're not really protecting up here. And it would definitely be possible for the northern frontier if they decided to punch through here to take Vyatka, in which case they've basically cut Russia in half. From this fort, they control this, they control this. There's a small passage down here, but that would be relatively easy to hold. And then that would effectively cut this lot off, which Austria and Prussia could potentially use. Meanwhile, the northern section is unguarded. But then the northern section, as we've seen already, is under threat from Maguindanao. Oh, we've got another fight coming in. Let's go and switch over to Iran because we have got the Timurids marching in against the Japanese. 6.8 morale against 4.9. 101 discipline against 105. Japan does have a plus... Oh no, that's Iran. Plus 10 infantry ability. Japan also only plus 10. Surprised it's that low. Artillery is no real benefit. Iran's forces once again being sent packing. Timurid morale just being unassailable against the Iran forces. We do still have a Iran and Texan army moving back. It does look like the Timurids are going to follow up their victory with an attack against Sain Noyon. Texas does have a large stack here and another stack here. It would be relatively easy for them to turn around and reinforce this. And it does look like Japan are the first to react. Iran have started to react. They could really do with force marching. These guys are locked in. That fight is going to happen. This is in the desert. There's not going to be any terrain modifiers. 40,000 against 30,000. The 47,000 still to arrive. 5 morale against 6.5. I mean, the nice thing for Iran is they have just a discipline advantage. They just don't have the morale to stay in these fights long enough for it to count. They are trying to reinforce with some pretty hefty numbers. It depends on whether they can get there in time. They're arriving on the 19th, which is today. Boom. Reinforcements have arrived. 80,000 against 69,000. They have, for the first time, actually getting outnumbered, or superior numbers against Timurids. Texas not moving in quickly enough, I think, but with just the sheer numbers here on the field at the moment, this does look like it's going to be a Iran victory, and we are starting to see a couple of the Timurid artillery in the front row. This is when the Timurids probably want to turn around. Texas now moving in, better late than never, coming on the 12th. Another 5 days. If they can hold out for 5 days, and boom, Timurids have been sent. And now that they actually have the Texans in reserve, they could counterattack. And I do wonder if they're going to go for Zax. Ooh, it looks like there is going to be a fight over Karakorum. Oh no, Timurids, you haven't just run next door, have you? That would be bad. Who's getting caught on Karakorum, even. 23,000 down there. Okay, this looks like 20,000. This is why you never retreat to the province right next to you. You always retreat behind your fort line. Always. Otherwise, this happens and they are going to get caught and stack wiped. They have superior, far superior numbers coming in. They already are low on morale. This is a -2 for Uran, so they're able to do a little bit of damage, but this is going to be a stack. Oh, no, they escaped. Oh, they got so lucky. Please tell me you're not just running next door. Please, please, please. Let's go and switch over to the Timurids so I can see where they're retreating to. I can't see where they're retreating to. Oh, yes, I can. Okay, this time they're shattered retreating a bit further away. Like, if you're manually retreating, never retreat next door. Never. First of all, always retreat to a fort, because if you retreat to a province, there's a chance they'll shatter anyway, whereas if you retreat to a fort, they will go to that fort. And secondly, don't retreat to the nearest fort, retreat one fort back, so that they have to take that fort before they can actually take you. Meanwhile, over on this front, we do look like we have the Russians pushing in against Hamburg. Hamburg currently being caught out of position and quickly stack-wiped before the Austrians, the Prussians probably even realised what was going on there. The Russians, meanwhile, are counterattacking. Viborg is currently being taken. It does look like a couple of the Swedish troops are being demolished. It looks like Sweden now relegated to carpet sieging role because just they don't have the numbers to really do much more. They're trying to re-establish an army and reassemble one, but it is going to be difficult. Gabs saying rip. Who's Gabs again? Gabs is Hamburg, yeah. His army did not last very long. Gabs' role here is going to be money. It's not going to be fighting. Although I am actually very curious, how much money are they making? They're making 40 ducats a month. Are they sending out any in subsidies? Yes, they are. Sweden's getting 20 ducats in subsidies at the moment, so it is very much Hamburg, which is bankrolling Sweden's recovery. Meanwhile, the Russians are pulling back again. They are not force marching to conserve some of that military power so they can continue using it. Moving back to try and curtail some of the Swedish attempts to take some of their land. Maybe moving here to support Viborg, because I don't know if there's any enemies behind them necessarily. It doesn't look like anyone's using administration infiltration, so they can't see the maps of the opponents. And Mordecai got jumped by AI natives and is currently fighting for his life. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oof. Choctaw, Iroquois, Obige, Huron. Oh dear. They do still have a 25,000 man army, so it's not necessarily the end, but I think that these are all reformed natives. What's a Mordecai's tech level right now? Oh, they're on 21. They do have 4 techs ahead of the native net powers. Miami's on 20. Cree is on... whoops. 16. So Mordecai definitely has the tech advantage, just whether they can survive for long enough. I think right now their plan is to try and take Choctaw out, because if Choctaw pieces, then all of this land is returned to them, and then they'd be back in the fight. So it's definitely not over, but also it's not looking good. Iran have been tapped for manpower. Iran have indeed been tapped for manpower. They still have tons of cash. I'm going to guess they're still not merking up. Iran, what are you doing? Save your manpower for your cavalry and your artillery, and then merc up to replace the infantry. I am surprised that they've not done that. Meanwhile, the Timurids still with 47,000. Japan with 5. Texas with 0. So it does look like Iran and Texas might be in a bit of trouble because they're out of manpower. I mean, they can still merc up, but the problem is they won't have the manpower reserved for reinforcing artillery and cavalry, which is why you always want to merc up probably about 30,000 manpower. That's usually when I would try to do it in this stage of the game, if I were those guys. 10 to 20,000 if I was one of the smaller powers like Austria or Prussia. Is this one war or 2 separate world wars? It's one war for Russia, but technically 2 separate ones. I don't know whether the HRE assault on Russia was in coordination with Iran. I doubt it, but it is possible. Because Iran is definitely like the big eastern power, which was acting as a power block to Russia. But Russia and the Timurids have been kind of steamrolling Iran, although not a huge amount of territory has switched hands, but they've just been winning the fight so one-sidedly. But right now we've got 90,000 HRE versus 30,000 Russians. Russians are pouring in, Prussians are pouring in, Austrians are pouring in. Have the Commonwealth finally joined the war? The Commonwealth have joined the war as well. It's now 140,000 against 106,000. We've got another 90,000 troops marching in. Russia's coming in fully. 6.9 morale versus 6.6. 133 discipline for the Prussians against 126. But discipline is still calculated on an individual basis. This is just showing you the highest. So the Russians with their plus 10 infantry ability and plus 10 fire from the Strelsky versus the Prussians with their plus 50 combat ability. Although right now it is definitely the HRE which are taking the damage because some of the non-Prussians are in the front row. And in fact, it kind of looks like the Prussian forces have not actually entered the fights. These are the Commonwealth, these are the Dutch, these are the Austrians. But it just looks like the sheer overwhelming numbers, 200,000 against 180,000, might be enough. But they are taking some absolutely eye-watering damage here. I'm actually a little bit surprised that the Russians are able to do that much damage. I think part of the problem is just the front line is so destroyed. This is one hell of a fight. This is ridiculous. Like, this is 100,000 casualties easy. I really want to see how many died in this battle. I don't think I'm going to be able to. And there we go. Russia have suffered their first defeat. Russia actually using mercenaries, unlike Iran. And it does look like the HRE have taken the victory there. Although we're going to switch over to this because I want to see what the numbers are like. So Russia's still got 100,000 infantry in the field. 100,000 manpower still spare. 50,000 is about to be tapped. And we did see them actually using the Strelsky button earlier to raise another bunch of troops. Although it doesn't look like they're going to need to wait too long before they can do that again. Are the HRE powers going to follow up with assaults against their forts? It does look like Bubrusk is in danger. It looks like the Swedes are continuing to push a little bit into northern Russia. The Russians falling back to St. Petersburg. A little bit dangerous on the enemy board here, but they know that Sweden doesn't have a huge army, so probably okay. And they are behind a fort line, so much safer place to retreat to. I think I probably would have gone to Mosyask if I were them, but it's okay. Russia's getting money from India, are they? Russia is getting a lot of money from India. 179 ducats a month, which is how Russia is able to afford all of those mercenaries. So Hindustan clearly also, one, worried about Iran, so probably boosting Russia so that Russia can continue to be a bulwark against Iran. And also they probably don't want to see a HRE rising, because this HRE is quite strong and quite united. Meanwhile, the Ottomans have finally taken out a chunk of Iberia. Brazil had pieced out earlier. Iberia taking a bunch of these lands, stopping Brazil from expanding any further. And now we've got Tunis having a crack. We've got Andalusia who took the south, just probably wanting the straight crossings.